afternoon, Keith Tebow from FRCMedia. Thank you for joining us. It's been a little while since we've checked in on activity up on Beacon Hill in Boston, and there's a lot that's been going on and a lot still to come. I'm pleased to be joined, as I have on many an occasion, by our state senator here in Fall River, Senator Michael Rodrigues. Senator, thank you for joining me as always. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Keith.
You're up in Boston today, but you're there probably more than here, and depending on the week, right?
Well, I'm trying to spend more time in the district for the month of August and September. Um,
Yeah.
but the last 9 months, especially, I've been in the State House every day. It's a pretty busy office, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, since the last time we spoke, there's been a lot of activity that obviously is impacting us here in Fall River. Let's start with toward the end of July, when the formal session ended. There were a number of initiatives that was passed. I guess first and foremost was the state budget
Yeah,
for fiscal year 2023, nearly $50 billion. That's a lot of money
it's
to
more like
spend.
52. But what's a couple billion
52,
amongst
actually over. I was sorry, it was
Well,
over
what's it?
50. Yeah,
Yeah,
initially it was just under 50, ended up being over. So
right.
talk a little
Right.
bit, Senator, about how some provisions in the spending plan will benefit Fall River.
Absolutely. First and foremost, the legislature again has fulfilled its requirement, its commitment to the Student Opportunity Act. The city of Fall River will receive an additional $23 million over last fiscal year in Chapter 70 dollars. Keep in mind, last year was $13 million over the previous year. So um, Fall River has seen a real influx of significant new monies for K through 12 education. Should make all the difference in the world. Money should not be any object going forward with, to not providing the students of Fall River with the best education possible. I was also able to once again secure the public safety staffing grants. Fall River receives, that's a competitive grant, so you don't know exactly what Fall River will receive in FY23, but I was actually able to bump the bottom line so that I would say Fall River will receive somewhere north of $1 million in public safety staffing grants. And I can just go on and on. It was a real successful year. Excuse me, local aid. We doubled the increase that the governor proposed in unrestricted government aid. Mental health, behavioral health significantly increased the funding for school-based health centers, for social and emotional learning, for behavioral and mental health services, for substance abuse disorder services. So it was a very good year budget-wise.
Now, in terms of the budget, was also a very good year, even though the final numbers may not be quite in yet in terms of revenue for the Commonwealth. I remember when we were speaking during COVID, how you had no idea how revenues would fall in Massachusetts, and fortunately, Massachusetts and other states actually benefited in some ways from the uh, the pandemic in terms of increased revenues. Revenues were not impacted that much at all, to the point where there is a surplus that came in for fiscal year 2022. And how can that be used moving forward?
Surplus. Well, we hope there's a surplus every
Right.
year because one of the principles of budgeting is conservatism, where we want to be conservative in our revenue forecasts so that at the end of a fiscal year, we're not making what's known as 9C cuts, where we're actually reducing budgets in order to provide a balanced budget. And there are always supplemental budgets, so additional budgets going forth in a fiscal year. We are also proposing some very significant tax relief. As a matter of fact, in the economic development bill, which is still in conference, it's the largest tax relief package in the history of Massachusetts. Over $500 million of permanent tax relief in the form of increasing the child independent tax credits, increasing our seniors circuit breaker tax credit, providing rental relief for renters, people that don't own homes but are renting their homes, by fixing the so-called estate tax cliff effect, which was really a glaring. Massachusetts was notably out of whack with the rest of the states in the country when it comes to estate taxes. So that's in the budget, in the economic development bill. In addition to that, an additional $500 tax refund to every citizen making between $40,000 and $100,000 per year. We've already provided $500 tax refunds for those making less than $40,000 per year, so we amped that up a little bit. With all that being said, Massachusetts is in a very healthy fiscal condition. We will have north of $7 billion in our so-called rainy day account. The Stabilization Fund is what it's formerly known as. And it's something I'm very, very proud of since I took over the stewardship of the budget on behalf of the Massachusetts State Senate. When I was first appointed as chair of Ways and Means in February of 2019, our balance in our state fund, our rainy day account, was $1.9 billion. We're north of $7 billion right now, which is important because the future is uncertain with inflation, with the pressure of housing costs, with the uncertainty of a war going on, causing global concerns over fuel and oil prices. Anything can happen very, very quickly, and we want to be prepared for that.
Yeah. Now, in terms of the rest of the economic development legislation, you talked a lot about the tax relief, but are there going to be other investments that we may be able to see here in the South Coast as well as part of that?
Absolutely. In the economic development bill, I secured another $1 million for Battleship Massachusetts. There was just an article in the local paper, in the Fall River Herald News last week, about the first $1 million I was able to secure for the Battleship Massachusetts in so-called ARPA 1, which was last fall. And they have, if you drive by there, you see they're giving the boat a real facelift and fixing a lot of capital expenses. I was able to secure another $1 million in that. I was able to secure some money for a neighboring town of Somerset, $750,000 to repair some culverts that have collapsed, really affecting a whole neighborhood in Somerset detrimentally. So there's a lot of wins in the economic development bill, and it's still in conference. A very complicated nuance was thrown at us, presented to us literally the last day of session, something called 62F. You might have heard of it, where it's a very obscure mass general law that was enacted by referendum back in 1986. It was only triggered once in 1987, so 35 years ago, that would call for an automatic return of about $3 billion to the taxpayers in a very regressive, non-progressive way. So we hit the timeout button to determine, can we afford to provide permanent tax relief? Can we afford to provide all these investments that we're making in Commonwealth of Massachusetts, in our hospitals, in our nursing homes, in our local communities, and return the $3 billion by this method? Or is there a way that we can, do both and provide significant tax relief to the voters and still make meaningful investments?
Yeah. Now, from what I understand, that determination about the that 62F, that 1986 referendum, I believe that won't be determined until sometime in September. Is that correct in terms
Correct.
of what
The
that will
third
look like?
Tuesday, that's correct. It will be determined by the third Tuesday in September. The auditor will file her official report on how much these automatic tax refunds are triggered. And we are doing an analysis also to see how the pandemic affected that. Because, as you said, during this recession, the Massachusetts economy has done very well. Likewise, Massachusetts state revenues have done very well, primarily because of the infusion of significant federal dollars. Over 133 billion federal dollars have been infused into Massachusetts economy in many shapes and forms. Employees who were laid off during the beginning of the pandemic, when all non-essential personnel were laid off. Over 1.5 million Massachusetts residents were collecting unemployment. There was a surplus, a bonus unemployment check of $600 per week. That is not measured as wages or salaries. But it does count as income. It provides consumers with billions of dollars of disposable income that they spent. While some sectors of the economy very much hurt during the pandemic, I'm thinking namely the restaurant, hospitality, tourism sectors. Some sectors of the economy boomed during the recession, during the pandemic. I'm thinking home improvement contractors, building materials, HVAC, air conditioning, swimming pools. I mean, residents spent that money. Likewise, that money fed this economy that provided not only revenue for businesses, but also revenues for the state tax coffers also.
Yeah. Another item that passed before the end of July was finally, for many people who were interested in this, the sports betting
Yep.
bill passed.
Yep.
There were some differences between, I know we've talked about this before, between the Senate version of the bill, which you
Right.
shepherd through, and then the House version. The
Right.
conference committee did make the adjustments and the compromises, and it did move forward. And I
Yes.
think you've probably already heard, Senator, a lot of people, really wanting to get to be able to bet. The Patriots season is starting soon, but
Yep.
there are some steps still procedurally in terms of getting this going that still has to take place, right?
Yeah, correct. The gaming commission that oversees not only our casinos in the Commonwealth, but they're also going to oversee the sports betting licenses. And we're excited that the bill is finally passed both branches, the House and the Senate, that the governor has signed it, and that the gaming commission is hard at work to provide the opportunity for those that want to partake in online sports gaming to do so as quickly as possible.
Yeah, as well as having them available at the casinos in
Correct.
Massachusetts, Encore and
Correct.
Plainridge and MGM.
Correct. Correct. So
Yeah.
residents can go to Plainridge or Encore Casino, the MGM Grand, and bet there, or they can do it, on their iPad.
Yeah. So we'll have to wait. I'm sure it'll get started soon enough, and people will be able to
Right.
get their sports betting fix in, if you will, as the season moves on. As we wrap up, Senator, it is an election season. You're up for re-election this year, and we'll talk about that as we get closer to November. But what's the plans for the state legislature? Again, the formal sessions have ended officially on July 31st. So what happens up in Boston between now and the end of the year?
Well, in the Massachusetts Senate, we will continue to hold informal sessions every Monday and Thursday. Informal sessions are a session that it's a session where anything can happen, but it requires unanimous consent. Just one person can object to the matters moving forward. So lots of routine matters, lots of home rule petitions. I'm hoping that we can reach a compromise and get this economic development bill and tax relief bill done in informal session. But it's very busy. I'm trying to spend much more time in the district to reconnect with my constituents, to say, hi, remember me, I am alive, but my responsibilities now require that I'm in the State House every day during formal session. Every single bill that has any financial impact, one can argue 99.9% of everything we do has some sort of financial impact on the Commonwealth, comes through this committee. So it's a lot of responsibility that I have to be present. I cannot do that remotely. But so I'm hoping to see all of you, all of your viewing and listening audience in person over the course of the next month or so.
I have to ask you one final question. I
Yeah.
remember speaking to you when the pandemic started, and we've done a number of these over the past couple of years.
Right.
That MBTA issues aside, I'm just going to put that out there. But I remember you saying, "Boy, traffic going up to Boston has been, pretty easy." I'm sure it's gotten a little more complicated, right, in the recent months.
It has gotten complicated. It's back. The traffic is back. Um, yes, it's back to pre-pandemic levels, absolutely. And with the MBTA issues, closing down the Orange Line, making all these changes, um, it wasn't too bad today. I mean, a lot of people are on vacation, so they're not coming
Yeah,
into work. But it's been back. I mean, during the height of the pandemic, when I think the only two people in the State House were myself and Governor Baker. We joke about that once in a while when we are roaming the halls, these darkened halls with no lights on, and
yeah.
we see each other walking by. But it's back.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing, right? We want the hustle and bustle of normal life, right? And we're glad we're probably back at that point. All
Yeah.
right, Senator Michael Rodrigues, as always, thank you for your time. We'll check in with you again very soon. Take care.
Anytime, Keith. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
All right, and thank you for joining us here at FRC Media. I'm Keith Tebow. Have a great rest of your day.